Sad is the blindness of the wise, answered Tuor, and sad too is the stubbornness of those we love, yet it was a valiant fault. Welcome to Tales of Ardub, where we discuss and explore Middle-earth. Thank you for joining us today to finish the great story of the fall of Gondolin, as it is told in the Book of Lost Tales, Volume 2. Last time we finished with the Gondolin preparing for battle. At this point, Morgoth's armies have already destroyed Gondolin's front gates and were now marching over the plain of Chmiel. Turgon opened fire. The House of the Swallow and the House of the Heavenly Arch let loose their arrows, but this did little to hinder the advance of Morgoth's forces. The army of the dark foe of the world came to the hill of Amon-Gwareth, the hill on which Gondolin was built. There, seeing no other way, Morgoth's armies broke the main gate of Gondolin with many weapons of iron, fire from the hosts of Angband, who burnt all in their way, evaporated the water in the fountains of Gondolin, save the fountain of the king. Gothmog, the lord of Balrogs, led the main attack of the city, and from the main gate thousands of orcs spilled on the fair streets of Gondolin. The houses of Galdor and Rog were heavily outnumbered, but they fought on slowly, losing ground, while any free archer poured arrows onto the orcs. At this time, Maeglin decided to fulfill his plans, and with the House of the Mole, he travelled to where Tuor lived, and there he found his prize, Idril and Earendil. He seized Earendil and intended to thrust him off the walls of Gondolin and to make Idril watch. But Tuor and the House of the Wing came, and Tuor cast Maeglin off the walls of Gondolin as his father Eorl had years before. Then Tuor left Idril and Earendil under the protection of Runwe, and his soldiers returned to lead the House of the Wing back into battle. However, in the north of the city, the elves were severely outnumbered. Duilian and Pendlon were slain, and then Rog of the House of the Hammer of Wrath rallied his folk and mounted a desperate charge against the Balrog. It is said that here was the first time a child of Ilúvatar had slain a Balrog. But soon enough Gothmog cut off the House of the Hammer of Wrath, and all were slain in the plain of Chmiel. And so slowly the houses of Gondolin redrew, and many creatures of Morgoth's, like dragons, decimated the noldor. The House of the Fountain retreated back and were joined by Tuor and his house. There they were pursued by the great dragon, and Tuor with his mighty axe hew at the creature's feet, and it fled. And now Tuor lured many Gondolindrum to the place of the well, where they were saved by Galdor and the folk of the House of the Tree. Tuor carried Ecthelion, who had been injured by a Balrog, and so, from there, the remnant of the House of Gondolin withdraw into the square of the king. Of the chieftains, Turgon, Tuor, Ecthelion, Galdor, Egalmoth, and Glorfindel were still alive, and Glorfindel and his House of the Golden Flower came late, as he had held the great market and was almost overrun and killed, but was saved by the House of the Harp. There, in the square of the king, the Gondolindrum made their last stand, and reinforced by the presence of King Turgon, the Gondolindrum were surrounded. Orcs pounded upon the barricades of the square of the king, and at last Gothmog came, and here Ecthelion, though wounded, fights Gothmog and is disarmed. But the lord of the House of the Fountain drives the spike of his helmet into the chest of the Balrog, and they both fall into the fountain of the king. And the water of the fountain kills Gothmog, but Ecthelion also drowns. At this, Turgon professes the doom of Gondolin, as the Noldor were pushed back to the very tower of the king. Turgon repented of his dismissal of Ulmo's advice, casting off his crown and bidding the Gondolin follow Tuor from now on, and if they might, find a way to flee the city. And then Turgon climbed to the highest peak of his tower and declared, "Great is the victory of the Noldor," to which the orcs sneered and mocked him. Tuor gathered the remaining elves, save only the royal guards of Turgon, who stayed with the king. Tuor informed the Gondolin of Idril's secret path, and so they fled with Glorfindel and his house protecting the rear. Meanwhile, Idril and Veronwa waited for Tuor before their house's door. But Idril became worried and eventually sent most of her guard down the tunnel with Earendil. Then she busied herself gathering survivors and showing them her escape route, and she even bore a sword and led her guard to smite many foes. But soon the enemy killed all the guard except Veronwa, and Tuor's house was burned. Seeing the destruction of her city, Idril fell into shock and began wandering around until she and Veronwa reached Gar Aion. There Idril and Tuor were reunited, the same place as they were wed at all those years ago. From here, Idril and Tuor witnessed the destruction of the Tower of the King and the death of Turgon. And now Tuor and all the survivors fled through the secret way of Idril, coming up to Criththorn. But looking back, Tuor saw 6 men pursued by orcs, and among them was Earendil. Tuor mounted an assault, destroying the orcs. So was Earendil reunited with his parents. Tuor and the survivors made it to the Eagle's Cleft, and moved along the narrow pass, a cliff to one side and a sheer drop to the other. They were assailed by orcs, and from behind a Balrog came up upon them, set there to prevent escape from the city. Glorfindel blocked it from reaching its prey, and there ensued a battle on the peaks. Glorfindel hewed its arm and fought with it, and to defeat his foe he threw his weight against it, forcing it into the abyss. Then the eagles came, driving the orcs off the mountainside, and so the exiles were saved. Glorfindel's body was worn up by the eagles, and a cairn was made for him, despite their haste, and after this deed the Eldar always remembered him in song. From here, the former great elves of Gondolin wander, and eventually come to the river of Sirion, and later reach the lands of Arvanian and the Mouths of Sirion, where they were welcomed by Elwing and the refugees of Doriath. But that is a tale not for today. Here is the end of the Fall of Gondolin. We hope you enjoyed this video, and comment what other topics you would like us to cover. And please like and subscribe.